You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the globe to bring you the latest developments in medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja.
We love the herb.
It's time for the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville. Now, here's your host, Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Monday, September 25th, 2017, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Welcome to the program. I hope you had a great weekend. It was quite an interesting weekend for us football fans, I got to say. And with respect to the protests that are going on with regard to the national anthem and the flag, and now the president trying to distract from what the real protest is about, I got to say, as someone who served in the military and swore an oath to defend the Constitution, I would like to remind everyone, it's the Constitution we're all about, not some piece of cloth, not some song. It's the Constitution. And for me, I feel a sense of pride when I see someone protesting. When no matter how they're protesting, it's not up for me to decide how a protest should be, whether it be blocking a bridge in Selma or kneeling during the national anthem. I think people that have a grievance that deserves to be redressed by our government, taking advantage of our First Amendment to be able to make that protest, that makes me so proud to be an American, more so than any song, than any piece of cloth. So that's my feelings on that. Also, real quick, right before the show, literally 5 minutes ago before we aired here on YouTube, I picked up the latest piece from Tom Angel out at Forbes. Turns out the FBI, which releases the Uniform Crime Report every year. We look forward to this every year about this time of year to find out what is the latest total for marijuana arrests in this country, right? We've legalized now in 8 states. We figure the marijuana arrests should be going down. After the last 4 years of the Obama administration, the marijuana arrests had been going down. Well, there's bad news and there's worse news. The bad news is the marijuana arrests went up just slightly, even after all this legalization. But the worst news is the FBI is no longer including a handy little chart they used to have in their Uniform Crime Report that gave the breakdown of which drugs, heroin, coke, meth, and marijuana were being arrested, people were being arrested for, and the breakdown of how much was for possession versus how much was for manufacture. Seems like they don't want the news getting out about how many more people are being arrested for marijuana, huh?
This is your Cannabis Headline News. Brought to you by MarijuanaMoment.net, the complete source for all your marijuana news in one morning newsletter from Marijuana Majority Founder Tom Angel. Subscribe today for free at MarijuanaMoment.net.
This is your Cannabis Headline News for Monday, September 25th, 2017. I'm Russ Belville. A bill to limit the amount of butane one may purchase in California has made it to the desk of Governor Jerry Brown. Butane is used illegally as a solvent to create cannabis extracts, popularly known as hash oil or dabs. When used in enclosed areas, the heavier-than-air butane gas can be ignited by flame or spark. Numerous well-publicized incidents of illegal hash oil manufacturing explosions in residential neighborhoods led to the introduction of the bill by Assemblyman Jim Cooper. AB 1120 would limit purchasers to just 600 milliliters per month, or a little under 20 ounces. Retailers would be required to keep records of butane purchasers to ensure the limit is followed. The bill is modeled after a similar tactic of limiting and tracking sales of pseudoephedrine in many states. The fact sheet for the bill claims that limiting that precursor chemical for methamphetamine manufacturing has, quote, a proven track record, end quote, of dismantling those labs. A bill proposed by the Maine legislature to license marijuana social clubs does not carve out an exception to the state's clean air laws that ban the smoking or vaporization of any products indoors. Such clubs could provide a venue only for the eating of marijuana edibles. Maine law currently allows an exception for the smoking of tobacco in cigar bars, as well as designated areas of workplaces, off-track betting parlors, and even hospitals. But members of the committee drafting the bill did not want to add such an exception for marijuana, said State Senator Roger Katz, a Republican of Augusta, and co-chairman of the legislature's Committee on Marijuana Legalization Implementation. Quote, "We have social clubs for alcohol, and they are called bars," said David Boyer, director of the Maine chapter of the Marijuana Policy Project, one of the groups that helped pass the Marijuana Legalization Act last fall, continuing, quote, "Bars can have outside smoking patios, and cigar clubs, they certainly allow smoking. Marijuana is safer than either of those substances," end quote. A Maine family is searching for help after their developmentally disabled son was evicted from a federally funded group home for using medical marijuana to help calm seizures and treat neuromuscular disease. The Portland Press-Herald reports 34-year-old Mark Medore was evicted from his Emden group home in July after staffers discovered he was receiving medical marijuana. Medore is currently staying in a makeshift room at a hospital. Steve Austin, the chief operating officer for the owners of the group home, said the violation put staff and other patients at risk and threatened federal funding. WJR-TV reports that a Superior Court judge is expected to rule today on whether a Rhode Island town can create its own medical marijuana ordinance that is stricter than state law. The town of Smithfield wants to limit the amount of marijuana a patient or a caregiver is allowed to grow to significantly less than what's allowed under state law. Under the state law, a licensed grower is allowed to have 12 plants, but the town ordinance would limit a grower to just 2 plants. The town council says it's an effort to prevent excessive marijuana sales. Patient advocates said the ordinance would be detrimental to those who need marijuana for health reasons. In a recent national survey, at least 1/4 of parents find it acceptable to share a marijuana joint with their son or daughter if they were 18 or older. According to the survey, marijuana is also generally viewed as less risky than alcohol. 45% of adults feel that marijuana is a safe alternative to prescription pain medication, while only 6% believe that for alcohol. All ages surveyed believe marijuana is safer than alcohol, with greater understanding the younger the respondents. Among 18 to 34-year-olds, 73% say alcohol is more dangerous than marijuana, compared to 53% of adults ages 65 and older. Quote, "Words fail us," end quote, says a spokesperson for a police department in the United Kingdom that had to dispatch a team to England's tallest mountain to rescue 4 of Britain's highest hikers. Police in Cumbria were called at about 6:30 p.m. by the hikers stuck on the 3,210-foot mountain who claimed to be incapacitated due to their cannabis use. Police said they worked with the Wasdale Mountain Rescue Team and were able to bring the men down to safety at 9:45 p.m. The post provoked furious reactions on social media, with some users suggesting the group be asked to cover the cost of the rescue operation, according to The Guardian. This has been your Cannabis Headline News for Monday, September 25th, 2017. I'm Russ Belville.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Looking for the 420 friendliest way to visit beautiful legal Potland, Oregon?
I'm Lori Duckworth, inviting you to come stay with us at Delta 9 House and Studios.
You get your own private room with queen bed and access to our high-speed Wi-Fi, premium entertainment system, and more.
We'll even cook you breakfast. Look us up on Facebook at Delta 9 House.
That's facebook.com/Delta9House. Delta 9 House is booked through Airbnb.com. City of Portland permit number 17-159855.
You're not high. You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
And one of the parts of the American dream is we're going to come down very, very hard on this massive drug problem.
Okay, maybe you're a little high.
If you work in the cannabis industry, consume marijuana, or just support freedom, you need to know about breaking policy news that affects you. Marijuana Moment is the daily newsletter that helps you stay on top of all the latest and most important state, federal, and international cannabis developments. Brought to you by longtime legalization activist Tom Angel, Marijuana Moment puts a concise yet comprehensive overview of cannabis news in your inbox early every weekday morning. Wake up to Marijuana Moment and rest assured you'll be ready for the cannabis news that's driving the day. Subscribe now at marijuanamoment.net.
Welcome to the United Kingdom Cannabis Chronicle, brought to you by the UK Cannabis Social Clubs at ukcsc.co.uk, your source for relaxation and reform. Today, we catch you up on the latest news and speak with an expert from the United Kingdom on the latest developments in ending adult cannabis prohibition. This is your UK Cannabis Chronicle.
Earlier this month, I made a voyage across the Atlantic to the Product Earth UK Expo in Birmingham, England. I was a guest of the United Kingdom Cannabis Social Clubs, which is the leading movement to legalize cannabis in the United Kingdom. Stuart, Harper, and Greg Hoedt, two of the executives with UK CSC, spoke there.
So I'm going to take it most of you are going to understand a little bit about cannabis social clubs, either from Barcelona or here in England. For those of you that don't, I'll just give you a little bit of background information. Cannabis clubs really started in Barcelona, and the reason they started is because although cannabis, not Barcelona, in Spain, although cannabis isn't legal, they have an obscure law that gives them the right to privacy, which means that within their own home or within a private situation, they can grow up to 2 cannabis plants. And what the people in Spain decided to do was to grow together into collectives of multiple people and then put those plants together. So instead of one person growing 2 plants, you had 50 people growing 100 plants. And then they decided that, you know what, we're going to rent a field from the local farmer and we're going to grow our crop there and we're going to share it amongst everyone who grows it, and there's going to be no profit made, and hey, you know what, we're going to get our own clubhouse, and that's where people can go and they can watch sports and play. And really that's where the cannabis social model evolved from. So it's not just a Dutch model whereby the principle is to operate and make money and make profit from your cafe, which is a commercial enterprise. The cannabis club is a much more social model. It's community-based quite often, and it leads to a very, very different flavour to what you find in an Amsterdam coffee shop. For those of you who haven't been to Barcelona or to the parts of Spain and Catalonia where the cannabis cafes and the cannabis clubs are now legal, I really advise you should go. It's a completely different experience to Amsterdam. Quite often you have to join the clubs as a member. And there's different facilities, so rather than trying to get you in, make you pay for an overpriced beverage while you consume your cannabis and then get you out the door so the next tourist can come in, it's a much more of a social, relaxing experience. And that's where it kind of came to the UK. So what we had is we didn't have the right to grow cannabis in this country, but what we did have is we had quite a lot of experts in the UK law and in European law. So what we decided to do is to sit down with them and to say, look, we've got these cannabis clubs in the UK and they're non-profit, they're not making any money, you know, they're producing cannabis and they're sharing amongst their members. But what's the safest way in which they can do that? You know, how can they do that? So if they do get caught by the police or they get stopped, how can they make sure they don't end up in prison? And what that kind of led to was almost a 3.5-year journey for Greg and myself and lots of legal experts from, you know, places like Release and other such organisations and Transform, was to create a model specifically based on UK law. So whereas when we talk about, you know, the Spanish Spanish clubs, or we talk about the Dutch coffee shops, or even you talk about the situation in Colorado or Washington, none of it is specific to the UK. None of it applies to the situation that we've got here because all the laws around cannabis are completely different. So what we did is we sat down and with these various experts, we decided to create what we decided to call the 9-plant tag model. And the reason that we decided to create it was to enable everybody that wanted to grow cannabis in the UK to grow it in a way that caused the least harm to society and the least harm to themselves. If you follow the rules that the UK CSC have put down, if you read the leaflets, and you don't have to join to become a member, all of this information is freely available online from the websites and things. If you follow the rules, you will not get more than a fine. The whole point and principle of the system is to take the level of criminality down to such a point that if you do get arrested, that worst case scenario, you're not going to go to prison. And that is to give people the reassurance, not only that, yes, it's possible for you to do yourself, but also to tell them where those red lines are. You know, rightly or wrongly, if you grow 15 plants in the UK, you could very well be done for a much more serious offence than you think you will be done. Because if you grow 10 or more plants in the UK, the sentence is ratcheted up because the government has decided in the sentencing guidelines from 2015 that you are supplying that drug. You are cultivating it with intent to supply because of the volume of plant matter that you've got. So the first thing we have to look at when you look at the tag plant model is the number of plants. 9's been chosen for a reason. We're not saying that if you've got cancer, 9 plants is going to be the best way to be able to grow oil. We're not saying if you've got a heavy recreational oil habit, 9 plants is going to be able to supply you. What we are saying, though, is that we've created a model we think, the first of its kind, is that it enables you to track seed to end product with serialization, exactly the same as they have in Colorado, exactly the same that big business is promoting in terms of model tracking from seed to sale.
We just want to do it.
And we've got a little presentation here that I'll let Greg kick off anyway.
We just want to do the same thing, but with a little bit more normality to it. We don't need this overarching massive regulation that intrudes into our lives. We're quite capable of looking after ourselves and growing our own medicine and cannabis for recreational purposes and for sharing it. We can just do it in an ethical and responsible way. So I went over to the States in 2011. I got to see how regulation was sweeping across America. How patients had to access it. I went over there as a sort of like medical marijuana migrant, if you will. I've got Crohn's disease, so I was late on stage. I have to run to the toilet every 20 minutes because my gut is just attacking me. So I know I needed access to medical cannabis, and I could only get pharmaceutical options here in the UK, which meant opiates and chemotherapy drugs, steroids, and things that left me bedridden. And that wasn't really the way I wanted to live my life. I couldn't actually physically grow at the time. I was that ill. So the idea of asking someone to grow for me, that was daunting in the UK. And I did. I went out and asked a guy called Jeff Ditchfield. I said, could you grow a plant for me? Because he was the out there cannabis activist. I help patients. And he just said, no, I won't grow one for you. And I was like, why not? And he said, grow one for yourself. And I was like, well, I can't. And he said, well, why should I grow one for you then? You're not prepared to grow one for yourself? No one else is going to grow one for you. So I kind of that's kind of true. And when I went around the States, I saw people who were, growing for themselves. And in California, they have a plant limit where you can go and get a recommendation and for a medical condition, and you could grow up to 12 plants. I think it was 6 mature, 6 immature. But if you grew in some counties it was 99 plants, and if you grew as a collective, you had 250 plants. So there was some reasons and rationalisation into why you might need a bit more medicine if you had a certain medical condition, or if you were growing for other people as well as yourself, or you were growing for a whole community. And what they didn't have out there was any sort of regulation for it. If you got busted for growing and you didn't have your paperwork in order, that was it. You'd be tried as a criminal, and the fact that you're a patient was nada. They didn't care. What's the point? So this is what we put together, is to try and sort of mimic some things that were put in place in the States and other parts of the US and Europe, and look at the situation here and go, how can we apply what they've got over there to what we've got here? So the first thing I came across was a book and a man named Doug Fine. He's a journalist for the New York Times, and he went and spent time in Mendocino with some farmers that grew cannabis, who were entered into this tagged plant model set up by the Mendocino sheriff, who, they grow trees out there the size of this stage. It's not a few little plants in a tent like we have to put up with over here, a greenhouse. Oh, people feel happy when they're growing in the greenhouse, but these guys grow, the tree of life. And each of them yield a couple of kilos. So their tags are about $10,000, $10,000 per tag, and you could have up to 99 of them on your plot. And if you had them on there, you would have a flag to say this is a medical grow, because the DEA don't walk around hundreds of miles of Mendocino looking for grows. They fly over with a helicopter and go, oh, look, there's a big grow there. Let's go and mark those coordinates, send the team in, eradicate that. So what the sheriff did is said, look, we've got legal growers up here, and these are 3-generation, family farmers. My age, in their 30s, their dad grew it, their granddad do it, and their granddad might have been the hippie that moved up into the hills and built their shack that turned into their farm. So they're working with these people who said, we want to grow, we're feeding the local community. The schools are paid for by the cannabis growers up there. The police force now is paid for by the fact that these tags are being used by the farmers up there. So they had a meeting, and they said, this is what we want to do. This is the sheriff coming to the cannabis growers with this idea. This wasn't a cannabis grower initiative that had been led. And he said, I will not bust you. I will not report you to the DEA if you put this flag up and put these tags around your plant. So when I go over with the DEA and fly over, I will point out, that's a legal grow, that's a legal grow, that's a legal grow, that's a legal grow. And if you haven't got it up, I'm coming down with a chainsaw and I'm chopping down your trees. And 30 people signed up to the initiative. And what the initiative really was, we need to pay for the police force. Otherwise, it's going to shut down. We're going to have to get rid of all of our police. And that will, in some of these areas, it does raise crime up into terrible rates. Gangs move in there and, ruin the communities that live there. So they know weed is running the community and is keeping the economy going up there already. So let's just cut the bullshit. Let's go straight to it. Let's put tags around these plants. Let's create an economy, and let's pay for the police force. So they did that, and after about 6 months of the project, they're going around saying, this DA flyover's coming soon. You better tag up your plants, otherwise they're going to come. And they got to a stage where about 100 tagged up their gardens. And sure enough, the DEA flyover came over, and there were so many gardens there. No one got raided that first year, and it was brilliant. It was the first time that had happened. So the rest of the other farmers around the area in Mendocino, so in the Emerald Triangle area of north of California, they got together and said, "This is what we need to do. This is helping us out." And now they don't have people just coming and going to sort of do trim jobs and people popping up grows and disappearing. They have a nice Mendocino industry up there where they've even developed a brand called Sun Grown because they can't use the word organic because organic is patented as organic by the Soil Association. So they've got a sun-grown cannabis, and that's something they hope is going to be a brand that was taken around the world. People will know that it's sun-grown, it's come from Mendocino, and this ethic, there's ethics behind the way it's been grown, and it's good weed. So we've taken that kind of ethos and thought, how do we impart that in the UK?
This episode was produced as part of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville, the daily news and interview podcast covering the world of medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. MJagenda.com.
Hi, I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. If you're a cannabis brand looking to build trust and awareness within the community, consider becoming a sponsor of this program. Your message will be seen and heard by the most dedicated followers of marijuana policy reform, who are loyal and supportive of those brands that give back to the community. Just log on to mjagenda.com and click the Become a Patron button to learn how your brand can also be featured in my live nationwide appearances. Thank you for your support.
The Marijuana Agenda. Like the gay agenda, only with better music.
The Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association and the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details.
Total war against public enemy number one.
10 federal criminal penalties for up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
Marijuana is probably the most dangerous drug.
Legalization is just another word for surrender.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
This is not medicine. This is a Cheech and Chong show.
Encourage people to use less drugs.
I am ill.
That was the point.
I think it would be a mistake to legalize.
Negative reports coming out of Colorado.
People don't smoke marijuana.
Well, folks, the prohibition of marijuana and the ongoing war on the plant didn't happen overnight, and legalizing it isn't going to happen overnight either. But I'm getting a little frustrated the more I learn about these legislators and their response to the will of the voters who went to the trouble of putting together petitions and getting signatures and passing initiatives. When it comes to them fulfilling their obligation to put regulations on legalization, they seem to have completely missed the message. The point of marijuana legalization wasn't to decriminalize a plant. It wasn't whether or not a plant was legal or not. The plant could give a shit. The plant doesn't care whether it's legal or not. The plant grows, and if you chop it down, it'll grow somewhere else. Plants aren't currently losing their rights. Plants aren't currently being incarcerated. Plants, while they may be chopped down, don't really feel it like people do. The point of legalization, that isn't to legalize the plant, but to legalize the people who use that plant. Legalize the people to make what they are doing with that plant legal, to end punishment, sanction, or discrimination against those people who are using the plant. Let me give you a few examples. Like Nevada, the state of Nevada is currently wrestling with the idea of on-site consumption or social clubs or pot lounges, whatever you want to call it. And currently, like the rest of the states, don't have any sort of social consumption area. So that leaves people who are visitors to Las Vegas or Reno or any of the place in Nevada who don't own their own property there. It leaves them no place to use their marijuana. Can't smoke it in the hotels. You can't smoke it on the street. And Nevada went to the trouble of making it a misdemeanor offense with a $600 fine if you're caught smoking marijuana in public. So yes, the plant is legal. The plant can exist in your hand. You just can't do anything with it. So what kind of legalization is that? Again, we're not legalizing the plant. We got to legalize what the people are doing with the plant. And what people want to do with that plant is smoke a joint. They want to share a bowl. They want to pull a bong rip. They want to pass a vape pen. They want to commune with others. That's why this social club issue is so important in this scheme of things when we're talking about legalization. In the news, I talked about the state of Maine, whose regulators are not carving out any sort of exception to the state's Clean Air Act to allow for indoor smoking or vaping at a marijuana lounge. Now, at least Maine has gone to the step of accepting that there needs to be a marijuana social club. There has to be a place for people to gather together and use marijuana. Why? Because that's what this is about. Legalizing what the people do with marijuana. If you legalize marijuana, but give people no place to use it, they'll find a place to use it. We always have. We did it when we were facing the threat of incarceration, loss of our stuff, destruction of our life. Now that it's legal and the worst we can get is a ticket, you don't think we're going to get together and gather and smoke somewhere? We're going to keep doing it. And so all you're going to do is manufacture a whole bunch of petty fines and, yeah. Now you get it, don't you? See, if there's no marijuana social club, then you get to catch people that are smoking marijuana in public. You get to still keep your thumb down on black and brown people, keep your thumb down on young people, keep your thumb down on people that might have some agitation to offer the system, because public smoking is still illegal. See, what the people do with the marijuana is still illegal, so we can still bust the people with the marijuana. Or, my state of Oregon is the same thing. We got this Clean Air Act that the purpose of the Clean Air Act is written in, they begin these laws with the wherefore, whereas, because this, because that. And then that outlines the reason why we're making this law. In the Oregon Clean Air Act, and I'm going to bet, I'll go out on a limb and bet the main one is similar. The Clean Air Act lays out all these rationales, which is because science has shown that secondhand tobacco smoke can be harmful to people, and because we have people that work, bartenders and waitresses and servers and cooks and such that work in places full of smoke, they're being subject to this danger that we've proven through science and yada, yada, yada. That's why we're banning smoking. Okay, so you got a Clean Air Act that bans smoking because we've got this scientific evidence that says secondhand smoke is bad. Now, we can argue about that secondhand evidence as to whether or not it is valid, as to how harmful it really is. We can also argue about, from a libertarian perspective, whether or not people ought to have the choice as to whether or not to work in a place that allows smoking, much like we offer people the choice to be nuclear lab technicians, stunt car drivers, or work in a coal mine, dangerous occupations. So forget those arguments for a second. We've got these Clean Air Acts that are built on the idea, on the platform, that tobacco smoking is proven to be harmful. The secondhand smoke from it is proven to be harmful. In Oregon's case, they went and shoehorned in through an amendment, through a bill, they shoehorned in tobacco and cannabinoids. Like they just added those words and cannabinoids into this bill. Now, they didn't add any extra new rationales that said, well, because science has shown secondhand cannabis smoke is bad, or because science has shown that secondhand cannabis vapor is bad. No. A law built on the rationale of the science of secondhand tobacco being bad is now being used to ban cannabis smoke and vaporizing. So this is how perverted the law becomes when you get these legislators who are still convinced in their heart of hearts that marijuana is bad, drugs are bad, okay, and they want to just use the existing clumsy tools at their disposal, like these Clean Air Acts, to just keep it banned, keep it down. And then the sheer hypocrisy in that Maine story where we talked about how Maine law allows an exception to that Clean Air Act for cigar bars. Oregon's law does the same thing. So let me get this straight. We got a law that bans smoking indoors because science has shown that smoking is bad and indoor smoking leads to secondhand smoke, which is bad. So we have to ban tobacco smoking indoors, and then we'll use that to justify cannabis smoking indoors, but you can go ahead and smoke tobacco indoors if it's a cigar bar. Really? So there's an exception to the science, but there's a justification that has no science behind it when it talks about these bans. Now, the problem with this is, again, we're not legalizing the plant. We got to legalize what the people do with the plant. And what people do with marijuana since time immemorial is have smoke sessions. They hang out in circles and they pass a joint or they pass a pipe around with each other. And to think that this is so controversial and problematic in a society that has in every town numerous places for the express purpose of drinking alcohol and getting high on that and socializing with people. Can you imagine the fallout if we tried to propose an alcohol law that said you could, you can purchase your alcohol, but only a limited amount, maybe a 6-pack or maybe just a little, a fifth, even less than a fifth, one of them little flasks of alcohol. And you can't drink it here and you can't take it anywhere to drink. You can only take it to the home you own. And of course, if you rent, people can ban whether or not you can drink at home. So, but if you own your own home, can you imagine trying to pass something like that and the outcry we would get? So, and it's not just the pot lounge issue that's problematic. Let's take the issue, this other thing in the news today with California coming up with the pseudoephedrine idea that will ban butane or will have a limit on how much butane someone can purchase per month. And then we'll have the stores track who's buying the butane, how much. And the idea is to reduce the hash oil explosion problem. Folks, it's an admirable idea in theory. Of course, what we found with the whole banning of the pseudoephedrine, which has indeed led to a decrease in the meth lab problem here in America, but has led to an increase in Mexican super labs and an increase in a new technique called the shake and bake method that has people carrying these volatile chemicals like in backpacks along with them. So, as usual, it's the balloon squeeze. You squeeze the balloon at one point and it just pops out the other, right? The drug market always finds a way to overcome these problems, right? Why? Because you can't repeal the law of supply and demand. You'd think Republicans would understand this. There is a demand for hash oil. There is a massive supply of marijuana. Those two things will meet, and they will cause there to be hash oil manufacturing. Now, the motivation behind the producer is that he's got a bunch of substandard weed or trim that he can't sell on the market, especially in a market now that demands the highest quality bud and there's tons of competition. But you can squeeze that into a glass tube and blast some butane through it and come up with hash oil that you can sell. So the way to attack this wouldn't be to try to limit how much butane people can buy. And I don't know, I really don't care too much about that. I'm more worried about the tracking aspect of it. But instead, address the need. If all these people growing marijuana could take their marijuana, take their trim to a licensed facility and have it blasted for them, and maybe that licensed facility takes a percentage of it, 20% of it off the top, and they get to sell it to the dispensaries, and the rest of it goes to the person who brought in the trim, you'd do a lot to end the hash oil explosion problem. You'd do a lot, because then the growers, these people, both, commercial growers and personal growers, would have an outlet for all of that to be able to make some oil, which is what they want. And doing this kind of thing would also lead to a precipitous decline in the price of that oil, which would then make less of the profit motive for the people to go and do that in the first place. I mean, whiskey stills can explode and blow up a neighborhood, but you don't hear about a whole lot of whiskey still explosions anymore. At least not since the end of Prohibition, right? Here in my home state of Oregon, also Washington State has done this. They're cutting down on how big the medical grows can be, down to just 12 plants. And I know there's people listening to this going, oh, just 12. Ooh, privilege problems, right? But for a lot of these growers out here, a system evolved with the lack of dispensaries, the lack of easy access. A system evolved where talented growers made a living and provided low cost or free cannabis to lots of really disabled people. Yes, there have been some who've taken gross advantage of the system and used it purely for interstate profit. I'll be the first guy to tell you. However, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and condemn these people who have really done admirable work, altruistic work, not becoming billionaires or millionaires or even 100,000-aires for what they're doing, just a modest living and providing tons of free medicine, literally over these past 20 years, tons of free medicine to the severest, PTSD and AIDS and cancer and MS, the worst conditions people that are suffering through. So again, the theme of this rant is let's legalize what people are doing with the plant. People had already been forming these co-ops, forming these large grows to care for each other. Find a way to legalize that. Don't try to keep taking the square peg and fit it in the round hole. Figure out what's already been happening. We've already had people who grow weed at home to supply themselves and some few friends. So legalize that, Washington State. Legalize home grow. Because if you don't, people just do it anyway. Trust me, I know lots of people growing in Washington State. Washington, D.C. Now, this isn't D.C.'s fault. D.C. would do this if they could, but Congress keeps blocking them, and that is not allowing pot shops. Well, how dumb is that? Even from Congress's point of view, right? From Congress's point of view, D.C. has legalized the possession of 2 ounces and the cultivation of, I think, 6 plants. But you've given nobody a place to buy marijuana at. Well, what do people do? Again, legalize what people are doing with the plant. What are they doing? They're buying and selling it. It's happening right now in Washington, D.C., I guarantee it. They're buying and selling it. Find a way to make that legal. And this goes to a larger extent to all of the legal states. When it comes to this licensing, some of these states have these huge licensing fees and a limit on how many licenses there are. What's happening in the real world? For time immemorial, there's been as many weed dealers as the market can bear. There was never a limit on how many people could choose to sling a bag of weed. What limited it was how good a weed salesman they were, how many contacts they were, how good the quality of product they had, like every other business. And then yet we get these regulators that come in and decide, well, our state should only have 1 marijuana shop for every 10 pharmacies. Or 1 marijuana shop for every 10 bars. Why? Because marijuana is 1/10 as popular? No. Because marijuana is used 1/10 as often? No. Because marijuana is 1/10 as harmful? No, it's far less than just 1/10. There's just no rationale. It's just a number they pick out of the department of their ass to just justify some sort of hard limit that the market doesn't justify. Legalize what the people are already doing with the plant. There's already people who grow a little bit amount in a closet and then they sell it to a few friends and family. Legalize that. Maybe charge the guy an annual license fee or some crap, $50 a year or something. Weed dealer license. This doesn't have to be difficult. It's not like we're dealing with plutonium, okay? It's just pot. That's all the time we got. Happy Monday, everybody. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
Follow MJ Agenda on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and follow MJ Agenda Show on Twitter. Learn more at mjagenda.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you